TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. I'm your friendly neighborhood philosopher, D. Wood. With me now is
TikTok, time to rock.
Oops. Is that on your end or mine?
And to everyone who's watching from all over the world.
I had the thing open before. Excuse me.
I've done that.
I'm a 23 individual.
People who normally watch know that I've done that like 187 times.
Yeah, there was suddenly two of you. It was a magnificent experience.
That's got to be one of the greatest moments of your life right there. Too. D. Wood's talking.
Definitely a high point.
So tell me, Robert, after all the death threats you've had to get over the years, even being poisoned, all the endless criticism, calling you racist for criticizing jihad, after going through it for decades now, do you ever sit back and think, man, I wish I'd spent my life criticizing something that's real?
Well, it is real in a certain sense, you know? I mean, of course, you and I have a disagreement about the historicity of Muhammad, but there's no doubt that Muhammad is real in the hearts and the minds of Muslims worldwide, and that it's very important to understand what the Hadith and Sirah literature teach about what he said and did, because Muslims follow it and imitate it to this day. And so it's very real. And even though it's false, and at very best he's a false prophet, and at worst he's a myth concocted for various reasons, either way, he's real as far as so many people are concerned. That's what I've been dealing with all these years.
So what I'm hearing is that you are the equivalent of someone who spends his life complaining about the Loch Ness Monster.
That's right. Yeah, well, you know, the Loch Ness Monster, David, lies under my bed at night and snores so loudly it keeps me awake. And so I think I have every right to protest about that.
Now, what is we've been through this about a million times, but we can't emphasize this enough. What is jihad according to what we hear in the West?
All our moral superiors, everybody who is better than we are, because they are not racist, bigoted Islamophobes. Everybody who knows all about Islam, some of the most learned Islamic scholars on the planet, Pope Francis, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, Joe Biden, the Dalai Lama.
All Islamic scholars, yeah.
Some of the most learned imams in the world. And they all tell us that jihad is an interior spiritual struggle that is entirely benign and indeed to be encouraged. And that anybody who thinks that it has something to do with terrorism is just buying into the twisted, hijacked version of Islam that the terrorists want you to believe. And so really, David, in a certain sense, you and I are just like Osama bin Laden, because he twisted and hijacked Islam to teach that the jihad was not peaceful and benign, and so do we. QED.
And we twist it mainly by reading the words off the page and and saying what the words actually say. But given this definition of jihad, we can see why, as we've mentioned many times before, we've had this My Jihad campaign in the West, where we're told that jihad is actually working out, building friendships with people and so on, because it's a struggle. Sometimes it's a struggle to do things that you don't feel like doing. So for the past couple of days, I actually ate vegetables. I don't like it. I'm okay with some fruits and stuff, but I'm not a big fan of vegetables. But I hear I'm supposed to be having at least some of them. So I've actually been eating some vegetables. Anyway, Robert, that's my jihad. What's yours?
Well, David, you know, I'm so seldom wrong that it becomes a point of difficulty for me to have to say when it actually does happen. And I understand that that is the sin of pride, in short. And so I have to be careful about that. My jihad this week is to acknowledge that many people told me that something that I reported last week was inaccurate. Now, I can tell you I passed this on in good faith from a person who lived in Russia for many years, but it may have just been Russian propaganda. that Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, does not actually speak Ukrainian. Although many people told me in correcting this that he was actually not a Ukrainian native speaker. And I think that in itself is striking and just illustrates actually the point I was trying to make, the complexity of the situation there. But in any case, yes, in passing on this inaccurate information, my Jihad is acknowledging and correcting that this week.
Robert Spencer admits that he's completely unreliable in everything he's ever said. We've confirmed his complete unreliability, and he admits it.
It's an obvious fact, David. Everybody knows. All those people on Twitter, they come along every few days. Spencer lies. This is fake news. So I give the sources. I say, tell me where I lie. Can you quote a lie and show that it's a lie? And then they disappear. Invariably. You'd think that after a while they would get tired of playing the game. But really, it is kind of fun. It's kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals. And the Harlem Globetrotters don't get tired of the game.
All right. Well, even though you've admitted that you're completely unreliable and untrustworthy and we shouldn't believe anything you say, just to humor us the way we might be humored by tales of the Loch Ness Monster, is there any news about Jihad that's come out within the past week? And actually, even I heard of something somewhere in the mainstream media. I heard about an attack in a mosque attack in Pakistan. So yeah. I heard something. But anyway, where would you like to get started with your tales of the Loch Ness Monster?
Well, the mosque attack in Pakistan is a good enough place to start. In Peshawar, it was an Islamic State, ISIS attack on a Shiite mosque. And so it's important to note that many people will say, well, you see, ISIS attacks mosques, therefore they are not Muslim. Therefore, they do not have anything to do with Islam. When actually, this is the manifestation of the fact that ISIS considers itself to be the caliphate, considers itself to be the embodiment of true Islam. These Shiites are Rafidite dogs who, that's the Sunni term.
Yeah, that's not you. That's not you calling people dogs, right? Okay.
Correct. That's the Sunni derogatory term for Shia because they are rejectors. That's Rafida, the rejectors of the early caliphs. And so consequently, they are not true Muslims. And thus, as heretics or apostates, they can lawfully be killed and should indeed be killed.
Not according to you. Again, not according to you.
According to the Sunni jihadis who killed them.
I've just had too many experiences with people cutting out that little clip of you, and they should be killed. You see, Robert Spencer says they should be killed. In fact, most of the bogus bans and so on, strikes and stuff that I've got from YouTube is them not understanding when I'm responding to something. So you play a clip of someone saying something horrible and you're responding to it, but they just, there's a clip of this thing right here. It's horrible. And then you have to explain it to them and so on. And Muhammad said in Surah 9, verse 73, that he's been commanded to fight people, not only unbelievers, but also hypocrites. And it's always interesting when people say, well, since these Muslims are killing these other Muslims that they regard as heretics and hypocrites and sometimes even apostates, therefore they're not true Muslims. When, correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, but that first generation of Muslims, which Muhammad said was the best generation of Muslims, almost annihilated itself by killing each other, right? Aisha, the mother of the faithful, Muhammad's wife, Aisha, the mother of the faithful, marched an army out against Ali, whose title was the commander of the faithful. So the mother of the faithful marched an army against the commander of the faithful, and about 10,000 Muslims. There were Muslims on both sides who had fought alongside Muhammad at the Battle of Badr and the Battle of Uhud and the Battle of the Trench, and they were slaughtering each other over a disagreement. And yet we hear today, ISIS is killing, they're killing some Shia, so not real Muslims, because they're imitating that first generation, which Muhammad said was the best generation. Strange world we live in, but they're the experts, not us.
We should note, just for those who might not know, that the battle you're talking about is actually at the origin of the Sunni-Shia split. And Aisha represents the Sunni side, and Ali is the hero of the Shias. And even to this day, it is in his Shia Islamic theology, it's considered that the leader of the Muslims has to be a descendant of Ali. And they hate Aisha in Shiite Islam. And meanwhile, of course, Aisha is waging war against Ali. That is why that all happened. One of the roots of the Shiite split.
So while you and I find attacks on mosques absolutely horrifying and horrendous, and while the vast majority of the world, even most Muslims, find these kinds of attacks horrifying, you can't rule people out as Muslims because of this, because it's exactly what the first generation did when they had disagreements. And Muhammad said that's the best generation. And where did they learn to settle all their disagreements through violence? They learned it from their prophet.
Precisely.
All right.
All right. So,
well, are we done with jihad for the week?
I'm afraid there's a bit more, David.
Darn.
If you have any time.
I thought we were going to be done. I was going to go eat some more vegetables, but now I can say, hey, I didn't have time.
There just wasn't time for the broccoli. That was a pop song in the early 70s. I haven't the time for the broccoli. But in any case, in Ukraine, there are a few pertinent stories. One is a very interesting thing that we got from an Iraqi political analyst. And you can tell he's a Shiite because his name is Ali Ash-Shamari. And Ali Ash-Shamari was interviewed on March 6th, which is what, Saturday? Sunday? Anyway, just a few days ago. And he is talking about the Ukraine war. And he has a very interesting take on it. He says Crimea and southern Ukraine, and even large swaths of Ukraine as a whole, are basically Islamic lands. Until the Ottoman Caliphate, these were part of the Islamic State. According to the Sharia, we should strive to regain them by any means possible. Now, that, of course, goes back to the famous passage in the Quran, drive them out from where they drove you out, chapter 2, verse 191, which is the basis for the Palestinian jihad, and also the basis on which this man is saying that because Crimea and parts of Ukraine were under Islamic rule way back 700-800 years ago, therefore they belong by right to the Muslims forever. Muslims have a divine command from Allah to drive them out from where they drove you out, to recapture those lands. So Ukraine is not Ukrainian and not Russian, it's Islamic.
Well, I say give the jihadis nothing, and if they don't like it, they can Crimea River. That was dumb. But Robert, what's that?
Sorry, I'm just saying we'll be here all evening.
Okay. So this is one thing I don't think that people understand, this idea that there are places that were at one point under Islamic rule, and according to Muslim thought, if it was once under Islamic control, they have an obligation to eventually take it back. It may take a long time, but they have to get that back. And that when we look at the situation with Israel, the Palestinians over and over and over again have been offered a two-state solution. The monkey wrench in the entire scenario is, at the end of the day, they want it all back. They want to take it all back. That's the ongoing monkey wrench. But people don't realize the people who actually say, the people who actually condemn Israel and say, hey, yeah, they are the cause of all this problem, don't realize that if you gave the Palestinian leaders, now to be clear, there are plenty of Palestinians who would be happy with a two-state solution. There are leaders who are usually focused on, nope, we're not settling for anything less than total victory and supremacy here. But a lot of people don't realize that if you gave them everything they want, if you met all of their demands, attention would just suddenly shift to Spain.
Oh, yeah.
Just instantly, hey, we once had Spain too. Now that becomes the focus. And they'd have to have that back. And you'd have endless terrorist attacks there. And they would have to have that back. And they would be oppressed there as well. And so it's just At some point, you just have to say, look, we'll help you in any way, any reasonable way we can. But no, you don't get to throw tantrums forever and demand everything that you once controlled.
Yeah, but we're not up to that. I mean, as a matter of fact, it's noteworthy. I wrote a book about this a few years back, The Palestinian Delusion, and it's available now. But in any case, David, the fact is that Islam is absolutely central to the Palestinian conflict. And it cannot be properly understood without understanding Islamic theology. And yet the one thing that has never entered into any of the negotiations for peace between Israel and the Palestinians, brokered by the Americans, brokered by whoever else, is Islam. It's never been a consideration in the peace talks. And that's why the peace talks have all failed, because they don't understand the roots of the Palestinian refusal to make peace with Israel. And because they don't understand it, they keep trying to fix it in ways that it won't fix. It's just like saying, well, my car's out of gas. Here's some water. I'll pour some water in the gas tank, and then I'll drive on my way. Well, that won't work. You're not addressing the right problem. You need gasoline and not water.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
so
back to Ukraine. We heard from ISIS this week also. I'm sorry, you going to say something there? Or should I go on?
I was just telling you to go ahead.
Yes, sir. The Islamic State actually said that the Ukraine war was crusaders against crusaders. And they hoped that it would end up destroying the, quote, enemies of Islam.
That sounds like Whoopi Goldberg there for a second.
Yeah,
remember
true.
Whoopi when she said she was saying something along the lines of, I don't care about the the Holocaust. That was white people versus white people, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Oh, she was saying, is this that had nothing to do with race? That was white people on white people. So now you got crusader on crusader.
But it's interesting to note that Ukraine and Russia are not waging war against any Islamic State. As a matter of fact, Russia is aiding Iran. Ukraine has friendly relations with the Islamic states around it. So what are they talking about? That they would call these people crusaders. And essentially, really, any non-Muslim entity is, as far as they're concerned, a crusader state. And this is actually the fallacy of a lot of Islamic apologists, because they say, no, there's no jihad that's offensive. It's just defensive against aggression. But they don't tell you that even just living as a non-Muslim in some understandings of Islam constitutes aggression, because you are rejecting the obvious truth of Muhammad and the Quran. And consequently, you're committing aggression against Allah, and you must be punished as a result. So they are already casting both Ukraine and Russia as aggressor states, which of course can trigger the defensive jihad against them.
Yeah, and Robert, I got a couple books on the Crusades here. You've studied this way more than I have, and written on it. So maybe you can fill me in. How much did Russia have to do with the Crusades? I mean,
Nothing.
Oh,
the Crusades were Western Europeans called by the Pope to defend pilgrims in the Holy Land in 1095. Yeah. Russia was not in the slightest degree involved.
So, yep, it's another situation of just calling them all crusaders, and that'll incite people against them.
Oh yeah,
as they're weakened through the fighting.
And remember, Osama bin Laden used the same language. I think that they're probably imitating him, because he always referred to the Americans as crusaders. But you could make a case for that, because America had troops in Saudi Arabia. That's what he was upset about. I'm not justifying Osama bin Laden. I'm just saying it's understandable that he would make an analogy between the Crusaders and the United States, because both of them were Western entities that had troops in Islamic lands. But when you're talking about Ukraine and Russia, that's just pure fantasy and, as you note, incitement.
And I guess since they spend so much time misunderstanding their own religion, that they would misunderstand terms like crusader as well. So it makes sense.
Yes. And speaking of misunderstanding, kind of an entertaining story this week out of Afghanistan. In Afghanistan...
Hey, that's something you don't hear a lot. Entertaining story out of Afghanistan, yeah.
That's right. It's a million laughs in Kabul these days. And one of the things that happened was the Haqqani network has been active in Afghanistan for many years. It's a very fierce jihad group run by the Haqqani family. But the Haqqani family has been very shadowy. It's It's very hard to find photographs of the leaders. But Sirajuddin Haqqani, who is the leader of the Haqqani network and the new Minister of Interior Affairs in Afghanistan, he actually made an appearance recently, even though he has a $10 million bounty on his head. But it's a sign that they're confident now, the Taliban, and not really worried about American bounties on heads. So he appeared at a graduation ceremony. But then he tried to recite a passage from the Quran. And he appeared to be struggling to remember the verse. He had to have recourse to his notes, and he forgot to say at the end of the recitation, Sadaq Allah al-Azim, that is, Allah Almighty speaks the truth. And so he's getting widely criticized throughout Afghanistan for not properly knowing the Quran. And here again, I am absolutely 100% certain from many years of experience in this that Sirajuddin Haqqani having trouble reciting a Quran verse at a graduation ceremony will be used as evidence that jihadis have nothing to do whatsoever with Islam, when really all it means is that he maybe is not a very good Quran reciter and doesn't have it memorized. But unfortunately, you don't have to have it memorized or be a good reciter to follow it.
And following the logic here, if someone can't recite Allah's command to violently subjugate the entire world and Muhammad's command to violently subjugate the entire world, then they're imagining that Allah and Muhammad commanded people to violently subjugate the entire world. So pretty sound refutation.
Yeah.
I think we should retire, Robert.
Yeah, because we're going to hear it. Sirajuddin Haqqani can't recite the Quran. He doesn't know the Quran. Therefore, Islam's a religion of peace. Mm-hmm. It's coming. There's just no doubt whatsoever in my mind. A few years back, I could not believe how much traction this story got. A couple of jihadis, while ISIS had its caliphate in Iraq and Syria, a couple of English guys went from England to Iraq, joined up with ISIS, and then they ordered the Quran for Dummies from Amazon. And I can't tell you how many articles I saw. Mehdi Hassan, who's now on MSNBC, and all kinds of people said, see, they don't know anything about Islam. They're trying to learn the basics of Islam. And they're in this caliphate. It shows that it's just a twisted and hijacked version of Islam. And I thought, there's any number of reasons why they might have ordered that book. Maybe they wanted to give it to a friend, an infidel friend. Maybe they wanted to brush up on some things. It doesn't necessarily mean at all. It's a complete leap of logic to say that because a couple of guys ordered the Quran for Dummies, therefore ISIS has nothing to do with Islam. But this is the state of the public discourse these days.
And you can imagine if you grow up not around actual, living, breathing, walking, talking jihadis who will cut your head off for getting anything wrong. Even if you're convinced that Muhammad did call for the violent subjugation of the world and you are supposed to be, striving for a caliphate and you understand those basics, you probably want to do some last minute studying to make sure you're not getting something wrong if you're all of a sudden going to be around guys who will cut your head off in a heartbeat.
If Sirajuddin Haqqani is getting a lot of trouble in Afghanistan just for reciting the Quran poorly, then these guys may have realized we better know it real well ourselves, or there's going to be trouble.
Mm-hmm. But I like that. I like that title, "The Quran's for Dummies."
Yes, indeed, it does exist. I believe it's by Yahya Imrik, and it's a very apologetic book, if I recall correctly. Of course, I mean apologetic in the sense of whitewashing all the elements of Islam that would make any non-Muslim nervous about Islam, but not in the sense of saying, gee, I'm sorry, those aspects of Islam exist. Okay, let's go to France, shall we, David?
Mm-hmm. It seems like we always go to France.
We always go to France. We go to France every week. And that's the wonder of the internet, really, because we don't have to pay for airplane tickets. We don't have to wear masks sitting on airplanes for hours. And yet we go to France. Mm-hmm. We are going to the St. Camille Hospital in Val-de-Marne. I have no idea where that is, but I know it's in France. And in France, in this hospital, according to a man who was asked by the government to draw up, by the Ministry of Health in France, he was asked to make a survey of conditions in hospitals. And he said that there are numerous Muslim doctors in these hospitals that refuse to treat women and Jews and homosexuals because they, of course, believe that to do so would be against the tenets of Islam. Now, this is not in Pakistan, not in Iran. This is in France. And it illustrates the fact that we have all too many migrants coming from Muslim countries who come to the West, and then they don't believe that they have any responsibility to assimilate and adopt Western customs and mores or conform even to Western laws, because, of course, the infidels are the most vile of created beings, as the Quran says, and the Muslims are the best of people. So they keep the ways that they learned as Muslims.
And it also seems to be related to the, well, when I talk about the stages of jihad, that, you know, a place like the United States, you have 1% of the population about is Muslim. Then what's Islam all about? Well, it's a religion of peace and tolerance. You start getting to places like France, where you have a much higher percentage, where it's not enough to take over the population or anything, but it's a significantly higher percentage. Then you start entering into a different stage. And so the point is, it'd be very weird. It could happen, but it's pretty odd to think in the United States of someone saying, "Hey, I'm not taking care of this person or that person because they're the wrong religion," when you've already got it now in France.
Yeah, it's all coming because it's all the same thing. It's just happening slower here. And as a matter of fact, in another illustration of what you're saying, in the same report at another hospital, it was near a mosque that was closed by the government because it was preaching jihad. When the mosque was closed by the government, 200 Muslims went to the local hospital and began to have prayers in the corridors. And of course, the hospital couldn't operate because there are all these people in the hallways blocking up the hallways.
Now, why the hospital? What was the point of that?
I don't know why the hospital. It's not explained in the news story. But actually, this is what happened in Val-de-Marne at St. Camille Hospital. And the other one about the refusal to treat is a more general statement. So in this hospital, I don't know why in particular. Maybe it was near the mosque or something. It's not explained. But in any case, the gesture of supremacy is unmistakable.
And it seems like, I mean, unless there's something we just don't know, like there's some reason to be in that particular hospital. It sounds similar to like, okay, you closed down this mosque for this reason, therefore we're just going to go block traffic or something like that. It sounds like, hey, we're going to go block hospitals so sick people can't get through or dying people can't get through until you give us what we want.
That's probably the objective. That, once there's enough intimidation, then people do what they want. And that actually leads us to the next story, which is about a New Jersey state senator named Edward Durr, D-U-R-R. And Edward Durr ran for the New Jersey State Senate last year, and he was elected. And he got a lot of heat because it turned out that he had tweeted while he was a private citizen before he ever decided to run for the state Senate. He had tweeted that Islam was a false religion and a cult of hate. And so, of course, he heard from the Council on American Islamic Relations.
Hang on 1 second. Let's see if we agree with that. What did he say again?
He said that Islam was a false religion.
Okay, check. I mean, to think about it, I mean, everyone, except for Muslims, everyone really agrees with that, right? It's like all the people who complain when we point out, the penalty for apostasy is death, and they complain about us instead of Islam. They all agree with us that you shouldn't be, executing people because they decide to leave Islam. They all agree with us. There are people who can say it and there are people who refuse to say it. So we all agree that Islam is false, meaning Muhammad's not a true prophet. If you agreed with it, you'd convert to Islam. It would be very weird to believe that Muhammad's a true prophet, believe that it's the true religion, and not be a Muslim. So that would be weird. So as far as that is, he's simply saying what we all already believe. And what was the other part?
Well, hold on one second about that, David. You're quite right. But that is actually a tactic that CARE has used for years. Because I remember way back in 2002 or 3, I was interviewed somewhere and I said, they said, what do you think Muhammad really was? And I said, well, he may have been a con man telling people that he was a prophet. Which really, that's about it. If you believe that he was historically accurate, I mean, that he really lived historically, which I believed at that time and do no longer. But that's another story. We'll debate that another day.
I'll crush you.
Question, though, okay, we'll see about that. Like last time, you mean?
You pulled some evil tricks last time. So.
Anyway,
Allah's not the best of planners.
Anyway, I don't want to. I'm losing my thought here and all the hilarity.
You're talking about CARE back in the day and stuff.
Yeah, CARE. I said so. I said he was a con man, and they put out a press release saying how terrible it was. And I thought, well, wait a minute. What? You thought I was a Muslim? You thought I believed he was a prophet? If you don't believe he's a prophet, he's either a myth or a con man. That's about it. Or crazy. A lot of people think he was crazy, and so that's something that they have used over and over again, and I find it striking that they seem to demand that even if you're not a Muslim, you have to pretend that you are, and essentially treat the world as if you do believe that Muhammad is a prophet. But anyway,
along those lines as well, to say, hey, I believe he's a prophet, when the book that he revealed has constant attacks on Jews and Christians, saying that we're the worst of creatures. I mean, think, if you say, yes, I believe he's a prophet, you're saying, I agree that Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures. You'd have to be affirming that. And as a Christian, you'd have to be saying, wait a minute, this book denies the deity of Christ, denies the doctrine of the Trinity, denies Jesus' death and resurrection. And I have to say, this guy, oh yes, I believe in this. This is a good, true religion alongside my own. It's absolutely ridiculous.
There are Christians who do that, though. I mean, I don't think they've ever read the Quran,
stupid.
But I believe it was the Archbishop of Washington, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not saying this for sure, so you can all tell me who it really was. But I believe it was the Archbishop of Washington a few years back, and he said, of course, yes, we can acknowledge Muhammad as a prophet. I don't think he had any idea of the implications of what he was saying. But in any case, if it wasn't him, it was some churchman. Now, Edward Dewar also said Islam is a cult of hate. Now, these are words that really Americans don't like to talk in that kind of language, and it seems as if it is rude, evil on the face of it. And a lot of people think, oh, well, see, he had it coming. He's an Islamophobic hate monger. But really a cult of hate when you have this book that says they're the most vile of created beings, that the Jews were transformed by their disobedience into apes and pigs, and all these other things. Well, it seems like there is a lot of hate in the book.
And don't be friends with Jews and Christians. They are friends of each other, and fight those who do not believe in Allah. And even saying that Allah has no love for unbelievers, and you're not allowed to have love for unbelievers either. I mean, this is... It's what else do you mean by hate, right? And the amazing thing is, if someone were to say these things about Muslims, if someone were to say, don't be friends with them, they're the worst of creatures, and say all of that, you would immediately be told that that's hate. But that's what the book is saying about us, and you can't call it hateful. It's a very, very interesting world we live in, once again.
Indeed, we do. So Edward Dewar, he says this stuff. He gets elected to the state senate. CARE says they want to have a little talk. He goes to the talk, he comes out, and he's got his mind right.
Nice.
Did you ever see the movie Cool Hand Luke?
Yes, I did, a long time ago.
You remember him? He's in prison. He's on the chain gang.
Oh, yeah. They break him.
The evil guard. Yeah, he makes him dig a hole, and then he digs the huge pit, and then he makes him fill it in, and they break him. Yeah, and he says, I got my mind right. Mm-hmm. And I'll do whatever you want. Yes, boss, I got my mind right. And that's what Edward Durr, he comes out of the meeting with CARE, and he's got his mind right. He says, I stand against Islamophobia and all forms of hate, and I commit to that going forward. And so now State Senator Edward Durr has introduced a resolution calling for recognition of the Muslim holy days, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, in New Jersey. And I think, well, wait a minute. Has he changed his mind? Does he reject his previous statements now? When he wrote his statements, I'm sure he was concerned about jihad violence. He was concerned about Sharia oppression. Does that not bother him anymore? Did CARE convince him that that has nothing to do with Islam? Or did they rather convince him that we will destroy you as a racist, bigoted Islamophobe if you don't toe the line? I'd rather think it's the latter.
I would think it's the latter just because, I mean, what could they say about Islam not teaching this stuff, right?
Well, Edward Durr probably doesn't know a whole lot. And so they could lie to him about the Quran. But I do rather think that, yeah, they flashed his political life before his eyes and he toed the line.
Yep, that is powerful stuff when people control your entire livelihood based on what you say.
It's a shame that we don't have more people who will stand up to them. But anyway, Germany. Shall we go to Germany?
Yeah, little side note, just based on what you just said. I mean, imagine, because what I've been saying for years is, at the end of the day, the solution to most of these problems is just having an informed population of free people. Once you get that, once people understand jihad, you can still, that doesn't mean you're going to go out and attack Muslims, but it means you're not going to fall for the deception and the stupid claims that a lot of the people who are trying to manipulate the population would fall for. And so it would be in that situation, it would be CARE saying, how dare you say that Islam is a false religion? And the population would go, what are you talking about? He's not a Muslim. He believes it's a false religion. He believes it's dangerous because of all these commands to fight people. What did he say that's wrong? And it would be, okay, he's allowed to say that. That's his view. What is everyone freaking out about? So, I mean, as long as he's not saying, hey, we have to go around putting people in camps and things like that, then my goodness, why isn't he entitled to have his perspective?
Indeed. And another thing, given the way American culture is right now, if he had said Christianity is a false religion and a cult of hate, then he would be a hero to many people.
Make him president.
People would be hailing, oh, yeah. He'd be lionized in the press as courageous, daring, brave. And,
should be king of the world.
Oh yeah. All right, here's an interesting story out of Florida. A man named Marwan Habib, and he recently confessed to assaulting a female tourist in a hotel in Miami. And then it came out that he was wanted for not 1, not 2, not 5, not 10, but 50 sexual assaults back home in Lebanon. Marwan Habib came to the United States, was led into the United States, and ended up doing the same thing that he did so many times in Lebanon. And this, of course, stems from various assumptions that are deeply embedded within Islam and indeed in the Quran itself, that women, as we have discussed in previous weeks, women who are not covered, or I should say, chapter 33, verse 59 says women must cover themselves because if they do not, so that they will not be molested, which implies the corollary that women who are not covered can be molested. And then there's all the passages about the captives of the right hand being able to be used sexually. Chapter 4, verse 3, chapter 23, verse 1 to 6, 424, 3350, 7030. All of these passages indicating that essentially non-Muslim women can be taken by Muslim men. Now, here again, I'm not saying that all Muslims believe this way, but obviously a lot of young Muslims do, because there are multiple testimonies. In France, a Muslim actually was raping his victim, quoting the Quran at the time. And a victim of a Muslim rape gang in the UK said the same thing, that the rapists would quote the Quran to her. And there was a videotaped rape in France a few years back, and on the videotape, the rape is going on, and the rapists are praising Allah and invoking the Quran at the same time as the rape. And on and on and on. I've got a lot of examples there together at Jihad Watch. And so I pointed that out because it's very common for people to say, oh, this is these Islamophobes. They're making all this up. Surely Muslims don't believe this. And yeah, sure, many don't, but many obviously do. And it is in the Quran. Consequently, it's going to be very hard to stamp out.
Yeah, I once, this is a different situation, but I once got I got a message from a woman who had become a Christian who had formerly been a prostitute, and she said that in her area, Muslims were her biggest customers, and they would make her recite something in Arabic before they had sex with her. Yeah, so they're all just doing temporary marriage. They're all just doing mutta. So notice we would, lots of people would look at that and say, what, you're hiring prostitutes? You don't take your religion seriously, when they're looking to their prophet who said you can practice mutta, you can have temporary marriage. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Muhammad, at least for a while, some believe that he eventually changed his mind. Others say no, it was a later Muslim leader who overruled it, and you can find sources supporting both those views. But Muhammad would allow his followers to hire prostitutes, but in order to make it halal, you just had to marry them for the hour or for the 3 hours or for the day or whatever terms you agreed to. So you write a contract, say, hey, I'm marrying you for the next 3 hours. Then you pay her, then you have sex with her, and then, you're divorced afterwards because you only agreed to 3 hours. And this was completely halal, according to Muhammad. It's going on in various places in the world today. And
it's generally accepted among Shiites. Very generally accepted among Shiites.
Yeah.
Sometimes found among Sunnis, but very common in Iran. And especially, actually, interestingly enough, in seminary towns like Qom, the holy city of Qom, where the mullahs go to be trained, or young men go to be trained to be mullahs. And they're lonely young men away from home, so they end up getting married a lot on weekends.
Yeah, and perfectly halal. And the thing is, if you ask Sunnis, they'll say, yeah, it's just a Shia practice because it's much more common there. But it's similar to the doctrine of taqiyya, where Sunnis will say it's a Shia practice, and it's much more common to hear about it with regard to Shias, but you find it right there in the Sunni sources as well. You find taqiyya, you find it in their commentators, you find mutta. And matter of fact, in Sahih Muslim, you can go Sahih Muslim and Sahih al-Bukhari. You can go to one passage and it'll say, but eventually Muhammad forbade this practice. And so people who find it revolting practice will say, you see there, our prophet condemned it eventually after allowing it for a while. But you could go to other passages that say, nope, it was one of the caliphs, and so that it was rewritten back into the mouth of Muhammad in order to stop it. And people who really want to practice it, well, okay, I think Muhammad never condemned it. And so it's just sick stuff.
Yes, sir. Speaking of sick stuff, I got a story out of Germany.
Good segue.
Here we go. There is a mother of a teenager who was killed fighting in Syria. And the mother is going to be jailed for 7.5 years. And one of the reasons why is because she encouraged her son to seek martyrdom, that is, to kill and be killed for Allah, as per the Quran, chapter 9, verse 111. And she applauded jihad massacres in Germany and in Europe. And she told him, I thought this was a very important phrase, she had told her son that it was important to humiliate and hate the infidels. And I thought, that's just not something we see in the average open mosque brochure that you can pick up at the local Islamic center. But it is something that is based very firmly on multiple Quran passages. And it's noteworthy that that's what she told him. She didn't tell him this is a religion of love, peace, and tolerance.
Yeah, and Robert, notice the parallel there, right? Yeah. You've got all these clear statements and commands in the Quran, the Hadith, the Sirah, the Tafsir. It's all over the Muslim sources. And if you're a non-Muslim, and you say, hey, that's a bunch of hateful stuff there, then, you get confronted by CARE. You're about to be canceled. But if you're a Muslim and you say, yes, that's what Islam teaches, this is what I'm going to teach my children, then you're in trouble too. So no matter which side you're on, if you're just honest about what these books say, you're in trouble.
Yep. That is absolutely true. But it's also true that humiliating and hating the infidels is something that we find very often all over the world in numerous ways. And that actually is my segue to another incident that took place in New Jersey. But I wanted to ask you, David, did we talk about last week the loudspeakers on the mosques in Jersey?
I believe we did.
He said, everybody's not Muslim here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember talking about loudspeakers. I wasn't sure if it was New Jersey, but that sounds like the same thing.
Okay, so we did talk about it, so I won't repeat it all, but I wanted to note in terms of humiliating and hating the infidels, that is actually one of the purposes of the call to prayer over loudspeakers. And I'm sure many people will indignantly deny this, but let anybody who's been to Egypt deny it. Because in Egypt, you can go to the Coptic churches, and invariably, or almost invariably, there's a mosque right next door, and right during the Coptic church services, they start to blare Islamic prayers over the loudspeakers into the Coptic church. Now, that is all about humiliating and hating the infidels.
Mm-hmm. No question. Let me address one comment real quick. Umair Malik says, please, David Wood, I'm influenced by you, but please answer about scientific miracles in Quran. So you mean scientific miracles like how could Muhammad have possibly known that the sun sets in a muddy pool? And that you can go there and find the sun going down into this pool and that people live there? You mean scientific miracles like Allah repeatedly saying that stars are missiles that Allah uses to shoot demons when they try to sneak into paradise, and that when you see a shooting star, it's because Allah saw a demon sneaking into paradise and he decided to pop a cap in him, which is, hurling a star, which is a shooting star? You mean scientific miracles like semen being formed between the backbone and the ribs? You mean scientific miracles like the 7 Earths that are flat and stacked up on top of each other? You mean scientific miracles like the 7 heavens being these domes that are above us and that would fall on us if Allah weren't holding them up? Are those the kinds of scientific miracles you're talking about? Because those are the only scientific claims that I'm aware of in the Quran are claims like that are obviously false. The only things Muhammad ever got right in the Quran are things that any 8-year-old could have told you. There is a sun, there is a moon. Muhammad got those things right. But as soon as he started saying anything beyond that, he got it wrong. And what you have, my friend, is a bunch of lying Muslim dawagandists who start twisting all these little passages everywhere in order to make them sound like something scientific. If you want, just read a passage. I've got several of my videos. In fact, if you want to post a comment in the comment section afterwards, I'll link you to some of my videos on some of these so-called scientific miracles. But it usually just requires reading the passage and having any understanding at all of what Allah is saying. So thanks for that. And if you want me to go into more, so I'll link you some videos. And if you want more, I'd be happy to talk endlessly about these scientific miracles in the Quran. All right, back to you, Robert.
Okay. David, that's a bravura presentation. Bravo. Anyway, here it is. Out of Berlin, another story out of Germany. This is a Turkish migrant named Tolga K. They don't give the last name of accused criminals in Germany. And actually, this guy is not even an accused criminal. He's actually a police officer. And he is a police officer, however, who makes YouTube videos where he salutes the Turkish flag, not the German flag. And he has a quote in one of his videos: "Those who obey the infidel will be slaughtered by the Turks. We give our lives for Allah. For every martyr will be avenged." And he has a lot of anti-Semitic, anti-Israel videos. And so what have the Berlin police given him as a job? He's guarding the local synagogue.
Wow. Well, that's the smartest thing I've ever heard in my life, because I've been dealing with Islam. I've been dealing with Islam and people gaslighting us for so long, for so many decades, telling us, yes, you're seeing one thing and hearing one thing, but the actual meaning is something completely different. We've been gaslighting. People have been gaslighting us for so long that the entire time you were saying what this guy's ideas, all I was hearing was peace and tolerance, peace and tolerance, peace and tolerance, thinking, man, this guy should be guarding a church or a synagogue or something because of how wonderful he is.
Yeah, well, that's no doubt what the German authorities were thinking. And so that's what he's doing in Berlin. We'll see how that works out. Interesting story out of England. This is not really directly a jihad story, but I thought it was interesting. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, he recently went to Pakistan on a goodwill tour. And he tried to get the Pakistanis to drop their infamous blasphemy law, by which so many people have been unjustly persecuted, lives destroyed, and so on. And he pointed out that even Muslims have been victims of it. And he went on to say that there was Islamophobia, genuine Islamophobia in England. And he said one of the roles of the Church of England was to combat Islamophobia. And he said he often speaks about this with the Queen. And I thought, this is very interesting. Justin Welby probably thinks of Islamophobia as vigilante attacks against innocent Muslims. And vigilante attacks against innocent Muslims are always and in every case to be condemned. There is no justification for such behavior. And if that's what Justin Welby means by Islamophobia, and says there's Islamophobia in England, and the Church of England is combating Islamophobia, that's great. But the problem with what he's saying, and the problem with all uses of the term Islamophobia, is that it's never defined, and Justin Welby doesn't define it. And it is also frequently used to refer to any honest discussion of how jihad terrorists use the texts and teachings of Islam to justify violence and oppression. And consequently, to shut down that kind of discussion on the basis of saying that it is Islamophobic. And when Justin Welby feeds into that kind of thinking, which he did on his trip to Pakistan, then it only has the effect of inhibiting resistance to jihad violence and honest discussion about Islamic teaching like what we're doing here tonight.
Mm-hmm. One more quick comment from Umair here.
Yes, sir.
He says, Sir David Wood, my father always told me that Muhammad predicted Pharaoh's death and his recruit of his body. Please answer it. Please, please, please. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Again, Umair, post a comment. I'd be happy to make a video about that. But basically, wrong Pharaoh. The Quran doesn't say that Allah is going to preserve his body. It says that Allah is going to preserve him in his body, which sounds like he's saying that he's going to survive. And the Pharaoh, the Pharaoh's body that Muslims point to as confirmation did not die in any sort of flood. He had such severe health problems that he definitely wouldn't have been going around on a chariot. He was messed up and bedridden. So everything about it is wrong, but this is something that Muslim apologists do. I don't know what to say. The Zakir Naiks and Yusuf Estes and these people of the world, they're the biggest bunch of liars I've ever seen. I'm not talking about Muslims in general. I've said before that I've known Muslims that I would trust with the lives of my children. I'm talking about the apologists. I don't know how to say it anymore. Zakir Naik is a complete, utter, total liar who will say anything to convince people that Islam is true. So was Ahmed Deedat, so is Yusuf Estes, and so on. And so, yeah, happy. Go ahead and post a comment about that, and be happy to make a video about it.
Okay, one more from Germany. A couple of Afghan Muslim migrants, Syed H. and Sayed H. That's their names.
I remember those guys. They killed their sister, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm. And they went on trial Wednesday.
Mm.
And so it's just another honor killing story. They killed her because she had a Western lifestyle. And this is yet another illustration of what we have discussed several times on this wonderful series, that honor killing has justifications within the Quran itself, within the Hadith literature and Islamic law. In many countries, there are reduced penalties for honor killings. Islamic countries, all Muslims account for 91% of honor killings worldwide. It's a phenomenon that is rooted within Islam. But of course, the denial about that is near total. And so here again, this is like female genital mutilation that we discussed last week, and many other ills. Because nobody wants to touch what the root cause is, it never stops.
And that is exactly right. And not only does no one want to talk about it, the people who actually do talk about it, because we understand that you have to bring this issue out into the open so that it can be changed. We're attacked and condemned as evil, horrible people. So we're silenced. Everyone else agrees not to talk about it and to just praise the ideology that keeps producing it. And then it never changes. And then it never changes. So, I mean, I would say that, at the end of the day, the brothers who kill their sister, they're the ones who are almost completely responsible. But I have to say almost, because there is this, entire system in place for never addressing the problem. And so, yeah, it's a really messed up situation.
And they grew up in a culture where if they had done it there, they would not be facing the kind of penalties that they're facing in Germany. Mm-hmm. They probably weren't fully aware that what they were doing was not so acceptable in Germany, or just didn't think about that altogether.
Yeah, after all, the Germans aren't complaining about it very much.
Yeah, there you go. It's only me and a few others who are talking about it at all. Anyway, David, I did want to get this one in. I thought you'd like this. Just like Muhammad says in the Quran, Allah says in the Quran, I got this new Qibla for you, Muhammad, and I know you'll like it.
Nice.
This is a story out of Pakistan. And the Federal Minister for Religious Affairs and Interfaith Harmony, Dr. Pir Nur al-Haq Qadri, he said Monday that the Quran is a complete code of life covering every aspect of life. And if the Quran were made part of daily life, then all of life would be changed for the better. And I think that's a fitting end for our program this week, that after an hour's worth of violence and hatred and intimidation, all based on Quranic teaching, we have this word from the Minister of Interfaith Harmony in Pakistan telling us if we only made the Quran part of daily life, life would be so much better.
And there is no better example in the world of interfaith harmony, of course, than Pakistan. So Pakistan is a beacon of hope, a lighthouse of interfaith harmony and justice that the entire world can look to and say, wow, how does Pakistan get everything so right when it comes to these interfaith issues? And we look to their leaders, and their leaders are saying, well, just go to the Quran, make it part of your life, and then you too can be just like Pakistan.
That's why Pakistan is such a huge illegal immigration problem. People trying to get in there from all over the world.
Yeah,
because it's a paradise of Sharia.
Yeah, if I didn't have all these kids, I'd sneak in right now to live in Pakistan. I know they'd probably catch me with a bunch of little white kids and stuff running around there. But
yeah, I'd get a flat in Islamabad. I'd have it made, man.
All right, everyone. Well, there we are. Spent the last hour talking about something that is the ideological parallel to the Loch Ness Monster, something that isn't apparently real, but so many people think it's real that we talk about it. And there are people like Robert who think that jihad is something more than this internal struggle. But unfortunately, there are tons of people who agree with them, tons of misunderstanders. We misunderstand Islam. They misunderstand Islam. All of us misunderstand Islam because unfortunately, Allah and Muhammad are the absolute worst communicators in history, and they just can never say what they mean. Sad situation. All right, thanks for joining us, Robert.
Thank you, David.
I'll always say, I hope I don't talk to you next week because I hope there's no jihad news, but
there won't be any. Everybody's too busy. That's not going to happen next week.
Yeah. With that said, I'll see you next week.
All right.